Hello, good morning, everybody. Welcome to our information session. It's always a joy to see people interested in this scholarship program, the topic of which is a little unusual in terms of literature's focus. Even though there's a literature on justice, we are approaching it in a slightly different way, more problem-focused than theory-focused, even though theory is necessary to help us to explain. So let me, my background is in organizational behavior, primarily, did some work in human resource management. Been in a field for over 40 years. And the last 10 years or so, I've been focused primarily on doctoral education and on responsible research. I've worked in a number of universities, and one of them is Notre Dame in Indiana, and also Duke University, ones that Jerry has mentioned, and then California, Irvine, and then also a university in Hong Kong. So it's been my great joy, privilege to be able to work with people like Jerry and many, many others, senior scholars on this responsible research project in the last 10 years. It's been a great ride, and I really enjoy meeting young people like you, all of you, and I hope to help you to navigate a career that's both rewarding, meaningful, and impactful. So that's all for me.
Yeah. And I'm Jerry Davis. I'm a professor of management and organizations at the University of Michigan in the Ross School of Business. And I've previously taught at a bunch of other places, not quite as many as Anne. Also a co-founder, early collaborator with Anne on the RRBM movement, really passionately committed to the idea of orienting research in business schools toward societal good, trying to find a way to turn all of the brain power on this call and among researchers in business schools towards taking on some of society's biggest challenges. And this scholarship is really part of that broad effort, that when you're at the dissertation stage, this is when I feel people are at their most creative, most innovative, and coming up with the most interesting ideas. I was a journal editor for 5 years for a management journal called Administrative Science Quarterly, and almost without exception, the most interesting, exciting papers that I was most thrilled to be part of came out of people's dissertations. It was really, that was a moment when people were most cognizant of the most pressing problems. And our hope with this scholarship is really to support students to be able to do work with the potential for impact, for helping to achieve justice, oriented towards the sustainable development goals. We want that to become sort of a central part of how the fields in business identify themselves. So Julianne, maybe we can start up the slides. And so this is the second year that we have done this program. So we did it last year and had lots of adventures in figuring out how this whole endeavor can work. And with the team that you have on the call, I think we worked out all the kinks and figured out how to make this program effective and magical for our purposes. A little bit of a background on what we're up to. So RRBM, which you will want to visit the website, maybe Julianne, if you could post a link in there. RRBM, Responsible Research in Business and Management, is an initiative that's about 6 to 7 years old, focused on trying to orient business research in service of society. Getting some weird random things covering up the screen, Julianne. I don't know what's up with that. There we go. So the vision behind RRBM is that if we could orient business research more towards achieving societal ends, serving society, we could advance, society's interests much more effectively than if the whole point is publication in itself and citation in itself. It also turns out that this is a really appropriate time for this. We're living in a world in great need of solutions or ways to address wicked problems. We're facing climate change, we're facing pandemics, we're facing declines in democracy and the rise of authoritarianism. We're facing sort of workplaces that are not really inviting or inclusive of people. How do we use research to help address these problems? This award is really part of this broader agenda. How do we support justice-oriented dissertation research? And we describe this in more detail in the literature that you can read online at the website, but we'll also be talking through it today. So if you're wondering, does my topic fit? We hope to be able to help you with that today, as well as online. Our session here today is really to clarify some of the requirements. What do you actually need to do? Part of that is, does my research fit, or is it a little bit too distant from the intention of the scholarship program? And also, what exactly do you need to do to apply? We have a pretty, I think, streamlined, well-articulated process for applying for this. And then we hope to leave a bunch of room at the end for chat and open discussion. As Julianne said, if you can just post your questions into the chat, that would be great. It's often easier for us to read and parse them if we see them in writing. So feel free to drop those in along the way, and we will keep track of those. So let me tell you a little bit about the award. The purpose is recognizing and supporting emerging scholars who have demonstrated an exceptional commitment to responsible research. So that's sort of the whole goal of RRBM. The award itself is a $10,000 scholarship that's oriented towards supporting your research in various ways, and there's a lot of acceptable uses for that. But in addition to the money, we also really want to support a community of RRBM scholars. So tomorrow, Anne and I and Julianne are meeting with last year's winners to do sort of a quarterly check-in to help them see, what do they need to achieve their research? Do they need help from senior scholars? Do they need access to additional materials, help with literature? I'm going to be telling people how the job market works to give people a bit of that sort of support. But the goal is really to provide a broader suite of support and to create a mesh, kind of a social network among people committed to responsible research as they start their careers, that we hope will live on beyond that. And our dream is that really year after year, as we add new scholars to this program, we'll be able to create this large alumni network of RRBM scholars that will help advance the aims of this program. And you become a part of this. If you can back up a second, you become a part of this college of active scholars who work with each other over the course of their career. It can sometimes feel lonely. You might often feel, I'm the only one that is interested in this topic. I'm doing inclusion at work. I'm working with entrepreneurs in refugee camps. Other people in my department don't understand me. We're trying to create broader communities that will extend beyond this. And this year, we hope to give up to 10 scholarships. Okay, next one up. So who is eligible for this? It is doctoral students enrolled in business schools. So I have to tell you, if you're currently in a sociology or a public policy program, I understand you may be doing great work, but we kind of have to limit this to people who are currently enrolled in business school doctoral programs. And so if you find yourself not being enrolled in a business school doctoral program, I now give you back the rest of your hour because that's one of the hard and fast rules that we have. We're also aiming at people at the beginning stage of their dissertation research. So not, I'm about to defend my dissertation in the next 3 months, but not, I'm in my first year and I have a vague idea. It's really aimed at people who have sort of made it through their comprehensive exams and are working at the proposal stage. That's the sweet spot for this. You've got a clear research question. You've got your methodology well developed so that we're able to evaluate it. You've passed your qualifying exams. And ideally, you expect to complete the dissertation in the next 12 to 24 months from the time of the award. So not 12 to 24 months from now, but about a year from now, the award will be given out in March. So, and you've also demonstrated a commitment to RRBM's principles of responsible research. There are 7 of them, and we will talk about them a bit today. What kind of topics fit for this? So the idea is, will your research generate knowledge or ideas that can reduce inequality, promote social justice, especially focusing on the role of business organizations? So examples that might be a good fit for this as you're studying income inequality and ways that organizations can address that, racial or gender equity at work and beyond, equal access to resources and opportunities, and how that vary by people. Stakeholder well-being, are you really serving the interests of the communities out there? If you want to get a feel for last year's there's a link here to last year's 7 winners and the topics that they worked on. Real broad diversity internationally in terms of methodology and topics. We are very ecumenical. We love to see different kinds of methods, different national and organizational locales, but they're all united by this commitment to reducing inequality, promoting social justice. Next
Jerry,
slide.
I'm going to interrupt you real quick. We had a question that's related to the research topics. And the question is whether or not this would include research on management in nonprofit organizations as well as profit-oriented organizations.
Yeah, it doesn't strictly have to be in for-profit organizations, so it can be in nonprofit organizations. If it fits into the topic of business and management, then that is eligible. And I think here I turn it over to Anne to talk about the SDGs.
Yes, thank you very much, Jerry. Julianne, yes. Most of the topics that Jerry mentioned so far, actually, if you are not familiar with the SDGs, I'd like to just introduce you to them. Some of you, most of you probably are already familiar with it. The whole point is the Sustainable Development Goals that was endorsed by, I don't know how many, 195 countries around the world in 2015, is all about reducing inequality around the world in many dimensions. So if you are thinking about, what do I study? How can I begin to find a problem? I would say study the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, especially the ones that we've highlighted here, to get a sense as what problem among these are of interest to you, and then try to figure out whether or not the problem that interests you is one that now there's a lot of injustice, inequality about it, poverty. Clearly, I mean, the world is, and not the world, but even the country, and even within a company, poverty issue, in unequal economic benefits and economic well-being is prevalent everywhere. So hunger, we know there are millions of children are dying of hunger every day, and then hundreds and hundreds of thousands of children are hungry in every country that we can know of. So if we go down the list, there's problems about public health, and COVID really revealed to us there's inequality in public health around the world. Wealthy countries get all the vaccinations, and poor countries don't get nearly enough to even for a small part of their population. So all of this, if you think about it, business organizations can contribute to solving some of these problems. So the question for us is to be creative in thinking about how can I find a problem that's in the area of inequality and justice that I can relate to, that I actually have some personal experience or knowledge or interest in, and try to read the literature, read the publications in other, like in economics and public policy and political science and sociology, to see what they have to say about it. And I'll be very surprised if you don't find a problem or two that you find fascinating and worthy of studying, in fact, committing your whole career to. So decent work, economic growth, not only growth of wealth, but distribution of wealth. That's clearly one of my favorite topics is inequality within the organization. Tremendous variation across the countries. But in the United States, we lead the world in terms of the difference between CEO pay and average employee pay. So the question is, what justifies that in our country, the CEOs get paid so much, and we have employees working full-time at less than minimum wage? How is that possible, right? Well, somehow firms find a way to do it. So the question then, we as management scholars can help find solutions to solve and to provide evidence that, in fact, less inequality is better for both business and for society. So that's kind of an example how you can translate into a big problem into smaller workable pieces. So go ahead to the next page, please. Julianne. Yes. So in terms of research methods, Jerry already mentioned about that we are welcome multiple methods, but for each dissertation, actually, we suggest that because dissertation research means you are beginning, you're learners of how to do scientific research. So there are really three types of methods that I would think would be very good for you to learn how to do them and to try to incorporate them in their research. So this kind of triangulation method, different methods all leading to the same conclusion. One is to have a real qualitative understanding of the phenomena that you're studying, the question you're studying. Just get really deep in interview the people, read about text analysis, go to the organization, so forth. And then second, of course, is to have some kind of theory idea to answer the question that may actually, well, the qualitative approach also helps you sharpen your research question as well, to really pinpoint the question that is researchable, meaningful, and that the answers of which provide potentially actionable knowledge. So the second part is the quantitative, using secondary data or primary data, such as surveys or even interview themselves. The text can be transferred into quantifiable data that you can analyze. Then the third piece, third method really is one that we don't use as much in the last some 20, 30 years of our management research, but is tremendously well used before that, and we are encouraging more use of it because of the power of this method to lead to interventions that would can help change the current practices and so forth, and experimentation both in the lab, especially in the field. And for the field, the method that is extremely powerful is called randomized control trials. You probably have heard some of that in the COVID vaccine tests, all the tests of vaccinations, and it's really using clinical randomized control or randomized clinical trials. Came from medicine, medical research, and also economic research use of that method a lot. So that's the methods page. So and we'll have a little bit more to say about the principles of responsible research, which also mentions the methods part a little bit. So that next slide is about one of my favorite examples about using field experiments. 2019 Nobel Prize winners. These three researchers spent 20 years of work in trying to solve the problem or reduce poverty in the developing world. They are development economists. And if you look at the methods they've used over the 20 years, they went to these developing countries, including India, South America, Bangladesh, and those other countries. They focusing on education, especially early childhood education, public health, and agriculture. Those are the three sectors they've chosen. Now, remember, this is 20 years. They didn't begin with this big project. This is accumulation of 20 years of work. So over 20 years, by using field experiments with control groups and lots of replications, different samples, different settings, and different countries, and so forth, they were able to have tremendous impact on education, on public health, and on agriculture. But if you look at the first line, absenteeism among teachers and nurses. In management research, actually, we have a big literature on absenteeism, turnover, and I'll put in the goal setting. Those are very, very active field experiment studies in the early days of management research. And we know a lot about how to reduce absenteeism, right? And many of those are already implemented in the organizations. But my point here is that the method they use is not so magical. is really a very, very well-known methodology. The difference is that they focus on real problems and they go to real sites to do their real research, intervention research, okay, supported by theory as to why those interventions would work, and then with robust evidence accumulated over many years to have the kind of impact they have. So you can start your 20 years of research on injustice of many forms. Pick an area. You want gender injustice, racial injustice, economic injustice. Pick an area that really matters to you. And then you can begin your dissertation research, then build on that year after year after year after that. Then you will have tremendous impact on practice because your whole motivation is to identify knowledge that can help change practice for the betterment of people in organizations or in society. So I introduced this page to you because I want you to have that sense of aspiration that I can be as good as these 3 Nobel Prize winners. We don't do research to aim to win Nobel. Some physicists actually did, but we want to do research aim at having impact on the world that we all live in today and on the world that our future generation would have to live in as well. So this continuing injustice is not good for the world in many, many ways. All right, next page. I think that's the page of the 7 principles of responsible research. And now this one is, instead of me talking, I thought we'd just show this 2-minute video to give you a very brief oversight of the overview of the 7 principles, and just as a way to, a different way to visualize and understand what they meant. And then of course the paper, responsible research position paper on the website has a much more detailed explanation of that. And we also have some articles that explain these further as to how they can be used to help your design, which is aimed at improving both the rigor, credibility of your research findings and also improve its relevance for practice, especially practice towards a better society. All right, so ready? All right, let's go ahead, go to the next page, please. All right, so this is my last page, and I'm going to turn it over to Julianne to talk about the application process. So the proposal itself, we're looking at roughly 10 double-spaced pages. No cheating, not 8-9 point, so font size, 12.5, approximately 300 English words. And then we also have some guidelines in terms of how many references, tables, figures, appendixes. And for example, we're looking at around 15 references. You don't need to be exhaustive in your references, but identify the key ones that if we look at them, we have some sense of what, which literature you're aiming to contribute to or draw from, and so forth. So specifically, we will be holding another information session in September to help describe more detail. How do you prepare the proposal? But roughly, these are the parts of the proposal that we're looking for. You develop a 10-page document, but you also will have specific questions on the application website that you will answer some of these questions. That, of course, begin with a research question. What's the motivation? Where do you get the question? And what is the main literature you're drawing from? And you have hypotheses, go ahead and include those, and theory and so forth. Then the method that you use. If you say, I'm really interested in the randomized control trial, but have no idea how to do that, you can say that, and that we will certainly find ways to help you learn that, if not at your own school. And then you need to describe briefly how your research design and the question and its outcome is going to align with the 7 principles that we just looked at. And that needs to have its own very standalone, clear statement. And that way we know that your design, your thinking is guided by the principles of responsible research, okay? Then a statement about potential impact. In other words, how is somebody, a policymaker, manager, executive, going to be able to use your research to make some change? So now this is very important. You're taught there's descriptive research, theory-based research, and there's applications research or applied research. We are not interested in pure theoretical papers. In fact, it has to be empirical, first of all. Second is that we are really interested on actionable independent variables. In other words, you meant in the IV leading to outcomes. What can people do with that IV? Okay, that can lead to the desired outcome. And desired outcome presumably is less inequality, more justice of some kind, right? So has the IV cannot be just somebody's cognitive thinking. If I think more fair, I will act more fairly. That thinking is not manipulable, right? So we want to say, what is the action that the firm or individual managers or people themselves can take? So be thinking about impact in terms of actual practice. So the 5 and 6 really about give us a sense as to what are your needs to help you implement this research project, what kind of support you need financially, and what kind of support you need intellectually. If you say, I'm working on a problem that I have no faculty interested in that research in my school, well, that's going to be tough. You need to have at least one person who's interested, because then they can be your chair, right? So, but you can certainly convince them that you have support from other schools or from outside the university. So just articulate what are your needs so that we can consider what kind of help we can provide. And then lastly is your research plan from submission December 1st, the submission deadline, and going forward, what is the timeline to completion? Okay, so that's roughly about the research proposal. And now I think, Julianne, you can tell us about the application process.
Okay, so there are 3 parts to your application. One is the proposal document that Anne just went through at a high level. This is the roughly 10 pages or so that are addressing the questions that she just ran through on the last slide. And you'll upload that into an online form where you'll be asked a couple of other short answer questions just to help give us some of the information from your proposal in a very brief summary format. In addition, we are looking for 2 written recommendations. One of these should be from your thesis advisor, and then the second can be from anybody you choose. That might be the dean of your business school, it may be the PhD program director, or some of your committee members. That's up to you. When you submit your proposal online in the form, you will provide these 2 individuals' names and email addresses. So you don't need to go ask them to write a letter ahead of time. When you enter their names and email addresses into our system, an email will be generated to them with a link to an online form that they will then fill out on your behalf with their recommendation and comments. So it's always good to give them a heads up that you've put their name in the system and that they'll be getting that email from us. We will be allowing a few days, maybe I think it's 4 or 5 days following the application deadline for these recommendations to come in, because we recognize that you can't always control the time frame in which somebody else is submitting something. But really, we would encourage you to work on preparing them for this request early, making sure they understand your work and are able to comment about it in this online form in that time frame. We'd hate to see this be the aspect of the application that prevents your application from being reviewed. So begin to think about that. And then the last piece is to upload your curriculum vitae. Pretty straightforward. All of this will be submitted online, as I said, in a form that will become available at the Dare to Care Scholars website and active on November 1st through November 30th. And we will be posting in September a very detailed set of application guidelines that will walk you through exactly what we're looking for with all of these components so that you have some very clear guidance to work from. All right, so what does that timeline look like once you've submitted the application? The applications, as I said, are accepted November 1st through 30th. And then in the month of December, we will run an initial screening of those applications. So what we're looking for here is, does your proposal match the general eligibility requirements that have been discussed earlier in the call? Are you enrolled in a business school? Are you, does your topic align with the research topic of injustice or justice in some form and related to business and management of organizations? Does your proposal follow the guidelines of 10 pages? We don't want a 50-page document for somebody to review. So we will be fairly strict about ensuring that the proposals that we receive not only adhere to the length requirements, but also address all of the requested components within them. So any application passing that initial screening then goes to an evaluation stage. Last year, we had over 50 senior scholars from around the world volunteer to review the applications that we received. And it was just a phenomenal set of reviewers and some really great energy from them in reading through these applications and providing their feedback on the proposals. So that will take place in the month of January. And then the finalists will be reviewed by a selection committee of about 10 people. And they will conduct their final evaluation and make a decision regarding the award winners. And then we intend to announce publicly who those winners are on the 1st of March. put in here a couple of links just to get you started. Really, these both will take you to a rabbit hole of a lot more resources, and I'd encourage you to spend some time browsing and reading to better understand the scholarship program itself and RRBM. The RRBM website has a wealth of resources, including that position paper that was mentioned earlier, but a list of webinars that are upcoming. There are some great ones coming up on the RCT method, for example. And there are recordings of past webinars as well. So a lot that you can do through these websites to learn more about the principles for responsible research and get some ideas to incorporate into your research. And with that, I see that there have been several questions coming in through the chat. Keep them coming. Feel free also to raise your hand and pose a question verbally, and we'll do our best to respond between the three of us.
So yeah, you might close the PowerPoint share so we can see everybody on Zoom. And then you can do gallery view so we can see everyone. Great. So I see Jerry's answering some questions already.
I have a question about timing of who you're kind of the sweet spot of what you're looking for, I guess, how advanced we should be in our PhD programs. I think, Jerry, you said that ideally we would have 12 to 24 months to use the scholarship funds before we graduate. Is that kind of a simplified way to think about that? Like I specifically graduating in summer of 2024, I think would be a little over 12 months, but not quite 24. That's okay.
That feels exactly right. So if you submitted the application in November, presumably your proposal is either accepted or en route to being accepted around that time. And then the funding would be for academic year 23-24.
Great, thank you so much.
That feels just right. Vanessa from Malta.
It's the question is a bit in the same lines because I'm supposed to finish beginning 2025. So would that still be eligible for the application now?
Sure. It's really more, it's less about when you're going to finish and more about where you are in the process now. So are you at the stage of at roughly the proposal stage, give or take 6-8 months, something like that. But it's really aimed at sort of the proposal, not I have a vague idea, nothing specific. That's not a good bet. Or I'm all the way done, it's approved, and I've got 3 more months to go. That's also not a good bet. It's really at roughly the proposal stage.
Now I should get the research proposal approved by end of the month. So then it would be where the work kicks off. One other question is, should it be on organizational identity, but the outcome be leadership development in non-profit organizations? These are topics that are in the sense, by improving these organizations, obviously it directly contributes to the sustainable developments, the more effective these organizations are. Are these topics that would be eligible, or because it's not a direct, it's by improving the leadership of organization, but not directly testing then the outcome of that organization, if it improved or not?
I mean, my sense is that leadership development per se might be a bit distant from this. So that doesn't feel as directly linked to inequality, justice, or the SDGs. So in some sense, anything that makes organizations more efficient can make, can contribute to the goals, but
it's not a direct.
Yeah.
Yeah, just let me clarify. Think about the IV and DV, very simple heuristics. The DV has to be some form of improvement in justice or equality, okay? So, and the IV has to be some actionable ideas. So if you say leadership development, we're going to have this leadership program that help leaders select and promote employees on a fair basis. So there's no discrimination or reduced discrimination in the selection, evaluation, and promotion of employees. And the outcome, yes, the decisions that's made are more just, right? And that kind of leadership development would fit because it impacts positively on justice issues, okay? But if it's to improve firm performance, then probably not, okay? Most likely not, actually.
And Pamela has a question in the chat. Maybe you want to answer that one?
All right. If advanced in the process, what may you use the funds for? Are these prohibited items? Thank you. Remember Jerry mentioned that we like proposals at a stage where you have a good idea, you almost get approval from your committee, and you're going to implement it. So our scholarship composed of both the intellectual and the financial part, remember? So we want you to be able to have the funds to implement it. That gives you a little more resources to do the traveling, data collection, subject fee, whatever, and also to have the extra help in your research. Okay, so if you're almost finished, then there's not much we can do about your research. It's already done. You have no need for our support. So I would say if equally, if all the selection, we would give priority to those that needed the help most in terms of financial and intellectual support. So I think that's, Jerry, is that fair?
Sounds good.
Mm-hmm. So it's not an award, remember, it is a scholarship to support. So, but if your dissertation is almost finished and you are submitting for publication, got accepted, you can apply for the Responsible Research Award. Yeah, that's why we had the award program for almost 5 years now. And there's also another page you want to go to read on our website. These award-winning papers are very good examples of responsible research.
Victoria.
Yes, Victoria, yes.
Yes, hello. Thank you very much for your presentation, very helpful. I was wondering also, how does the course on responsible research play with the award? Is it something that you would recommend ahead of applying or as a complement to applying to the award?
Okay, for the course itself, it's for all students, whether or not you apply for scholarship or not. Okay, the basic idea of the course is help you understand what is science, what is the relationship between science and society, science and policy. How do we create credible science? How do we know what we have is close to truth? Why according to the rules, principles of scientific research, things that we do nowadays like hacking, p-hacking, positive, only accepting positive hypothesis supporting research, those are not good scientific practice. So the course is really for general education about being a social scientist. By understanding that, we believe that your research proposal, research design skills will be stronger. And that's why we say it's a recommended part of the research proposal, but it's not a required part because you might already have some of that exposure through your own other courses or readings on your own. And so that's why it's totally new to the field of science, and this of course you might find useful, regardless whether you apply for the.
And Anne Jose asks, is the course still open or are we past the deadline for enrolling?
Oh, that's a question. We just made a decision on this new year, this year. But I would say if you're interested, by all means, send to me and Don Lane, who was my co-instructor. We might put you on the wait list because people do drop out occasionally. Last year we have three people couldn't do it because their schedule changed. So yeah, so we might be able to have some space for latecomers.
Fantastic, thank you. Sayam Galwash.
Saham.
Yes, sorry, I was muted. Sorry for that.
No problem.
Thank you so much for this informative session. Actually, as I said in the chat, I am a first-year PhD student, but I'll get my PhD courses done by September, and now I'm preparing for the first-year report to just start writing my research papers. And by that time, I mean by the fall 2022, I'll be done with that. Am I still eligible for this scholarship or not? And this is one thing. And the other thing is that my research is about the role of entrepreneurship in accelerating sustainability in developing countries. And I'm using Egypt as a research context. So do you think I have a potential to apply for that scholarship or not? Thanks.
So the topic sounds very much in the realm of what we have. If you look at last year's winner, that topic feels pretty squarely in certainly in what we were seeing last year among the winners. If you're just still at the stage of classes, it might be a little bit premature. So if your proposal, if you didn't sort of already have nailed down, here's the sites I'm going to use, here's the plan and the hypotheses, you'd really need to be at least that far for it to be very competitive. So it might be a little bit early this year. You might think about it next year, just depending on the speed at which you're able to complete the proposal.
Yeah, thank you. But actually, I'm working on my research proposal right now, and it's qualitative research, empirical qualitative. It's not quantitative. So do you think I'm still eligible for that scholarship?
Yeah, that seems like a reasonable bet then. I mean, I would say the worst thing is if you spent a couple of hours working on the application, that alone would also help you make progress. So even if the committee felt that it was a little bit early, they'd still be able to give you good feedback, and I think it would still be a good use of your time.
Yeah, I agree with Jerry. Every time you try to describe what you want to do to somebody, either verbally or in writing, it helps you sharpen your thinking a little bit. So I would take every opportunity to try to articulate what am I trying to do. And in addition, you pass the screening, that you get feedback from the reviewers as well. Everybody else is clear about the requirements? Okay,
and if anything occurs to you after this, you're welcome to send us an email, give us a holler. I think we have an FAQ page on the site. But if there's any lack of clarity, feel free to reach out and we'll try and help.
Yeah, on the website, there's also a FAQ, frequently asked questions, right, Julianne? So they probably, we try to add to that when we have a question that's not been asked before, and we try to provide the answers just in case somebody else has that question too. So I think it's pretty extensive set of questions and answers to those questions. So. Well, in that case, we look forward to your proposals. It's just a tremendous joy to read the proposals. Jerry and I read every proposal last year. In addition to the reviewers, we're not part of the reviewing team. We were part of the selection team. So it's just lots of fun to see all the exciting ideas that young people these days are thinking about and planning to work on. And that's just give us lots of hope that the world of research will have we begin to changing in the kind of questions we ask and we study. and hopefully will generate actionable knowledge to help managers and professionals in profit and nonprofit and government to help our society be kinder and nicer to everybody and not just the 1%. Okay, Jerry, Julianne, anything else? Anybody else? Everyone
We're
good?
good. Thank you all for being here. We're really excited to see your proposals coming up. Really excited about the work you're doing.